Hello, friend, and welcome back to another episode of the Everyday Boss podcast. I'm so excited you're here, and I'm so excited Michelle is here, joining me today as my guest. Michelle DiNio is a business growth strategist and host of the Real Truth About Business podcast. With over 15 years of experience across business development, accounting, operations, sales, and leadership, she helps entrepreneurs scale sustainably through her signature-focused visionary accelerator framework. Michelle is known for cutting through the noise with customized, data-driven strategies that simplify growth, increase profits, and free business owners to build the life they truly want. Welcome to the show, Michelle. I'm so glad you're here.
I am so excited to be here. This is going to be such a fun conversation. I cannot wait to see the direction it goes.
Yeah, I know. It's going to be a good one, especially because we both come at business, not from business coaching, not really from business consulting, but from business strategy, which is built on facts and data and experience. So let's talk about your origin story. How did you get to be a business strategist?
Yeah, it was really, I call it accidental. I mean, I don't think anything in life is accidental. However, it was not the path that I intended to go down. Long story short, very long story short, we were living in upstate New York. My husband and I are both born and raised in upstate New York. And we had a very dear friend that passed away. He got lymphoma and passed away. Between diagnosis and passing, it was 5 months. And it just rocked our world. And, when things like that happen, they always say that statement, only the good die young. I could not wrap my head around that. He was not just one of the good ones. He was one of the best ones. And so we really did a lot of reflection. It really hit me hard. And one of the lessons that we kind of came up with, or that the only lesson I could come up with from that horrible situation, was that life was meant to be lived and loved. And he was the epitome of living and loving every aspect of his life. And my husband and I really couldn't say the same. We hated our jobs, not hated them, but they were jobs, they paid the bills. It's not like we loved them, but we did not like upstate New York. We did not like the weather. We didn't, none of it. It just wasn't us. And so anyways, we decided to uproot our lives. We sold all of our belongings, quit our jobs, and we moved 1,300 miles to go live retirement. My husband and I are also 22 years apart. So retiring together was never going to be a thing. And so when we moved, we were we're sitting here waiting for retirement, and he just passed away at 29 years old. He never made it to retirement. So why are we sitting here miserable waiting for some inevitable day that may never come, Yeah. And so we uprooted our lives, moved to Florida thinking it'll be no big deal. We're both really high level executives up in our worlds and our careers. And I went from being a top level executive to glorified data entry with all of my skills. And I just thought, Nope, I did not work this hard to get where I was in a man's world. I mean, I worked in engineering and manufacturing.
Wow.
I'm not doing it. I'm not going to just be the secretary, the one that and Florida's very good old boys, especially on this coast. And I just refused to do that. So I just started networking and networking and networking and networking. And that turned into 1,000,001 one-to-ones and people picking my brain until finally somebody said to me, I don't understand why you will not let me pay you for your time. And that's where it started.
I mean, what a story. There's always something, right? There's a pivot point for almost every passionate entrepreneur I've ever had a conversation with, where they're in it for the passion of it, not just for the finances, which there's nothing wrong for doing it for money, but there's something deeper. And there's some sort of moment of clarity where you're you know what? This is not the thing. And this needs to change immediately. I have my own version of that story. You've got yours, so many of us do. But when we can look at that honestly and reflect and be this is when everything changed. And then that secondary pivot point of you know what? Actually, I do deserve to be paid for the wisdom and experience and knowledge that I have. What a story. Yeah. So then you started charging. And
so I just started, I it was one of those things of wow, I really didn't realize this was something that I could do, because again, I had been born and raised in the career world. I'm not from a family of entrepreneurs. It was get a job, work your way up the ladder. And so I just started kind of working it out. And I thought, well, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to see about what it would look like. And so I hired a coach, and that was kind of it. And it's been a pivot in year 8. So what it looked like back 8 years ago is not at all what it looks like now. I
Yep.
think it takes time to evolve and for you to really figure out what those key points are. But for me, everything, it's very interesting because I look back now and I look at where I am right now, 8 years later, and it's very much where I started, but the middle was all over the place with a bunch of noise, following other people's strategies. And I just really, and probably just the last 12 months came back to, and I'm just finding myself full circle of like, this is what you did when you first started, when you didn't know any different, right? Like when consulting, when I was a little baby consultant and brand new, I only taught what I knew. And what I knew was facts. I came from accounting and operations. Like you work off of numbers and data and facts. And I just kind of got away from that. And now, 7 years later, I'm like, no, I'm coming back to it. And so now I'm just doing everything that I did basically in the beginning, just better.
Yeah. Amazing. It's so true that like when we start, right, we're like, okay, we're in business. I have no clue what I'm doing, but there's something we do know, right? Like there's a foundation we're building off of. And then we hire coaches and we join programs and we listen to experts and we're like, ooh, so-and-so's being really successful on Instagram. So I'm going to pivot everything I do and do the thing that like do my version of their thing. And then there's definitely a coming home to our own wisdom and our own knowledge and experience and like brilliance in our own methodologies and our own routines and systems and the things that we build. I've also experienced that. Like that's been the last 3 years for me of really like, I'm tired of playing the game of entrepreneurship and just doing what I'm told and trying to cram myself into other people's boxes. And it's a conversation that I'm seeing happen so much more frequently in the female entrepreneurship world. And like, thank God, because I was 5 years too early and I felt like I was like shouting this to the rooftops and no one was listening. And now I know something that we align with is like defining success for ourselves in how we do business and life. But like, thank goodness we are having these conversations now. Like, oh my gosh, a whole new crop of entrepreneurs get to do things differently and more intentionally based on what they want their life experience to be versus, well, if they're being successful, I'm just going to be their mini me and figure it out.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think COVID really played a huge role in that because there was just, an influx of what I call COVIDpreneurs. And there's a lot of them that have done well and are very, very successful. But there was a lot of them that were just doing it because there was something to do and there was nothing else to do. And unfortunately, people saw that opportunity and capitalized on it and became this like, follow this pattern and you'll make all this money, And so I think it was hard not to fall into that trap for those years. And I think that was probably 2020 through 2023. I saw a lot of that of like just this copy paste style strategy. And then 2024 came and none of those strategies worked anymore. And so you had to make a choice. You could either go back and get a job, which I think a lot of people did. And I truly respect that. But I also think there was a lot of people that were like, screw this. This is not what I signed up for. As you mentioned, this is not the game. I'm done playing this game.
Yeah.
And you got back to your roots of like, let's go back to I call it like, can we go back to the good old days of 2017 to 2019 when people had a brain and we were thinking for ourselves and we weren't just like so inundated. And I don't mean that negatively. Like, I know that sounds negative, but I really, it's like utilize what is innately in you. Trust your gut, whatever that decision-making center is for you, trust that and go back to using it and stop listening to all of this garbage out there that is just sending people down these paths of burnout and frustration and everything else.
Yeah, 100%. Anytime you try to fit yourself into the box or the system or the pattern, you might experience success at the beginning, like, right? Like you pour yourself in, you fit the mold, whatever analogy you want to use. But that is the fastest path to burnout, in my opinion.
Oh, 100%.
Because it is not true to who you are. It is not true to the purpose and the core values that you have or the reason you're on this planet. And if you continue to push, it's like pushing a boulder up a mountain. right?
Mm-hmm.
Like it's so hard. And the closer you get to the top of the mountain, the more gravity is working against you. Not to mention the fact that you're already tired from freaking
Right.
moving the boulder in the first place.
Exactly.
And then like the next thing
Exactly.
you know, the boulder is crushing you and you are like done because you are so burnt out. You're so exhausted and it's really easy to throw in the towel.
Yes. Yes. Starbucks always is like my go-to. That's like, wouldn't it just be easier to go work at Starbucks sometimes? But then, I don't necessarily want that. And, back to your point there about aligning success and defining it for what it looks like for you. And I think that's really important to make sure that everybody really takes a minute to just really understand, like, what is my version of success, and for me, it's time freedom. For some people, it's money. I think money comes with time freedom, or like they play a role in each other. But I also think just understanding, for me, it's just the freedom to make my own decisions, the freedom to make my own schedule. The fact that, I decided this morning I wasn't going to sit down at my desk until right before we hopped on this interview, and I was doing other things, right? Like that to me is success. And so whether that looks successful on paper to other people, whether my profit and loss statement looks successful to other people, that's really, it doesn't matter to me, and I think a lot of people chase something because there's so much pressure around success being driven by money, or success being driven by audience, or big numbers, or fame, or stuff like that. And I just think there are so many other success factors that come with entrepreneurship that we overlook, and that we just tend to look past. And if you are making your own schedule, that's a massive win. Like that's such a success factor, because in a job, you can't do that. Right. And so just that in itself is so like honor and respect the success that comes with that.
Yeah. I talk a lot about how as entrepreneurs, especially female entrepreneurs, we traded in the, American dream, the white picket fence with the 2.5 kids, minivan, and a golden retriever, right? For the before 2020, the, ideal successful female entrepreneur was doing the bikini beach laptop thing, right? That's what we were told it was supposed to be. That's what it looked like. Okay, six-figure months, 10K months, 6-figure plus years, and living somewhere tropical. And that never resonated with me because I don't chase money. I chase impact, right? Like that's core to who I am. I want to change people's lives. Money follows that. That's great. I need money, but like, that's not why I do what I do.
100%.
But I'm not a beach girl. I'm not a mountains girl. Nothing against Florida. It's fun to visit. I love me some Disney World. But like, I'm a mountains girl. I want to be walking barefoot through the trees and seeing wildlife and deer and a pack of dogs, and like waking up and watching the sunrise over the mountain across the way, right? Like that's what my vision for my best, most beautiful, magical life is. And I'm actively pursuing that, right? Like I'm on the trajectory for moving to the mountains, hopefully in 2025, if all my health stuff kind of figures itself out. Got a few things to figure out. But then like my goal is by the fall to be like seriously putting a moving timeline, if we're not like, okay, let's just do it. But I'm actively moving towards making that my reality. But you have to envision it before it can be your reality. You have to know what it looks like. You have to understand what are the data? What's the data? What's the factors? What is the evidence of me living my best life? And you can't know that. You can't know if you're having an impact if you don't know what impact, if you don't know what success, if you don't know what like results are. So let's talk data. How do you like support your clients in finding the data that actually shows them when they're on the right path?
Yeah, I think there's so many different ways, and people get so intimidated by the word data, right? Or data, whatever. And it's like, there's data in everything, right? There's data in everything. And that's what I've been working with actually a new group of clients here most recently. And I was just having this conversation with them this morning, even about feedback, right? Encouraging them to go and ask their clients, their current clients, why did you hire me, right? Like what made you say yes to me? Why was I the person you said yes to? What made you finally decide that you were ready, right? Like, and they are so intimidated by that question. But the reality is there is so much data in just that simple question. And even in just asking for feedback, because oftentimes we make assumptions, we lead with emotion, and you cannot grow and scale a business led by emotion and assumption, right? Like you have to look at the facts. And so a lot of times people think their messaging is falling flat because they're not a good copywriter, or they're not this, or they're not that, or whatever, when in reality, they're just not even speaking the language that is what their client is looking for. And by just simply even asking that question of like, why did you hire me? I always find it so interesting when I ask that, because I always think they're going to say they want more money, right? Like they need more clients, they want more revenue, they want more this. And 90% of the time, what they say is, I needed focus, right? Like I knew I needed clarity, or I was all over the place, or I was stuck, or, and they're emotional things. They're not even usually those tactical things that like, I'm like totally blanked on the word there, but they're not like those measurable, like I need to hit 10K months, right? Like I don't think I've ever had anybody say to me like, that's why they hire me. So like looking at just understanding what makes your clients say yes is massive data factor. Understanding too, like, how long does it take leads to convert? Where are your leads coming from? So I try to look at 5 different areas for me, and it's clients, your offers, what offers are selling the best, your revenue, obviously, your time, where is your time going, and marketing. Like where are your clients coming from? That's even like another one. And I'm sure you talk about that a lot too, but it's like, where are they even coming from? I can't, the amount of people that spend all of their time creating content for Instagram when their clients all come through referral. It's like, that's why you're not getting a return on your investment of your time in Instagram, because they're not there. Your people aren't there. Right. So just looking at in those 5 areas, there's data in all of them. And so just asking yourself and getting curious about the questions. It's not always about diving deep into the numbers. And I think that's what people immediately assume when they hear data is like, they got to look at dashboards. They've got to look at their accounting. They've got to look. And there's a lot of information there. There's a ton of information there, but it's not the only way to look at the data.
Yeah. I think you can get a lot of information from just asking, right? Like asking your clients, the people who've converted, why did you finally say yes? Like, what was the thing that made you say yes? What was the moment that like really captured you and you're like, ooh, I want to work with Michelle, or like whatever it is, right? Like just having those conversations and getting that feedback can give us so much information, because you're right. It's not hard numbers. It's not follower counts. It's not engagement numbers. Those are information we can use to allocate our time and decide where we're going to invest energy into content creation, right? Like I have a client right now who was like, I really love Instagram, but like, it's just not working. And I'm like, that's because it's not where your people are, right? Like,
exactly.
And I wanted to be like, you need to be on LinkedIn. Like all of the energy and effort you're putting into Instagram, your ideal client, they're not there. They're not consuming content, and you're not going to convert there. I know you love it, right? Like she thought that because that's what she loved to do in her spare time and like, and just in between whatever, right? Like we doom scroll as a society now. It's just a thing we do. And she thought that because that's where she went to do her like whatever, easy breezy, taking a break kind of stuff, that automatically meant her people would be there. And the data now backs up that that's not true, right?
Not.
And then we look at her LinkedIn analytics, and with very little effort, she's getting 3 and 4 times as much engagement and like response and conversation starting. There's 2 things that come to mind with that. Is like, one, okay, obviously go play where your people are active and engaged, whether you like it or not. Sometimes we just have to get over it. We're in business. We're not in influencing or content creation. But 2, it's about conversations. So if you're putting all this energy and effort into like trying to get stuff started on Instagram and it's not working, where are conversations happening already for you? Is it networking? Is it the other platforms? Is it Facebook? Is it a Facebook group? Like where can you actually start conversations that feel natural and safe and don't feel like cold DM selling? Right?
Exactly.
Like we have to do that that's where conversations lead to conversions.
Oh, 100%. And I think that's the thing too, is I look at that. And I also look at like, I always try to encourage my clients too, to understand your own buyer behavior, right? Like, are you buying off of an ad somewhere, or like, are you hiring a coach because you've been following their content forever? Or is it because you've had a conversation with them because you see other people promoting them? Is it because, right? Like a lot of times our own buying behaviors are also our ideal clients' buying behaviors. So yeah, I love to scroll TikTok. Like TikTok is my doom scroller, but I don't often buy things off of TikTok, right? Like I get a lot of information, I get a lot of entertainment. So am I going to put my time and energy there? No. Could I? Yes. I mean, there's clients on every platform, and I think that's the thing. But like you said, it comes down to conversations. And most of us buy, especially some type of big purchase, through by having a conversation.
Yeah.
There's very few people that are, especially now, especially in 2025, because we've been there, done that, that are buying off of some sales page. They're just not.
It takes more than just words on a screen, on a page, on a website to especially because so many people have been burned, right? Like the COVID entrepreneurs, they came, they saw, they poofed into the ether. They made some money along the way, but like some people got burned in the process. Some people had really horrible experiences or questioned their own purpose or like, should I even be an entrepreneur? You know, I know, you know, we're 2 years kind of post COVID, if you will. And I'm seeing a trend of people who've been in business for 7, 8, 9 years pre-COVID, right? Like they were doing the work pre-COVID, they got burned out over COVID, and now they're looking to go back to corporate or 9 to 5s because they're just tired. They're burnt out. But if we can look at those things and make those decisions and then be intentional, right? Trusting our gut, listening to our intuition, following our values, right? When you know what your core values are and how they impact your life, when you know what your definition of success is and how it impacts your life and where it shows up, you have the information you need. So you can ignore follower counts, right? Exactly. And you can have those conversations. We're so far past just written words. We need to talk to people. We need to experience their energy, especially those of us who survived the last 5 years of entrepreneurship. We know the value of face-to-face, whether it's through networking, you did your vibe check-in networking, or you had a one-on-one conversation, or you've consumed their video content. You can get so much of a better read on someone and experience who they are and how they would relate to you so much more clearly when you can actually like see them talk and hear their expressions and see their hands move and the smile or whatever. And so much clearer to make a decision around. Yeah. So having those conversations, like even if it's virtual face-to-face, is so key.
100%. Oh yeah. Absolutely. And I think too, just simplifying it, right? Like there are very few things in the world of business that actually move the needle, right? Like when you look at it and you really go back to like the absolute simplistic, easiest way, there are very few things that move the needle, right? Like you're saying is, you know, you have to have a clear offer. You've got to know what your offer is and it's got to solve a problem, right? Like we've got to have a clear offer that solves a problem. You have to have an audience that you are connecting with, having conversations with, and you have to have a sales strategy. You have to have a way to move your audience into said offer, right? Like at the end of the day, it's as simple as that, right? Yep. Like a clear offer, people, and a sales strategy. And everything else, like technology and AI and all of these things, there are tools, there are softwares, there are tools, there are a million different things that can amplify some of those things. But if those 3 core things are not really clear, then all of those tools are just going to add more noise, right? Yep. And so when you look at the data and when you have the time to take a look at the facts, you will see for yourself, like as you look and ask yourself those questions, if you take the minute to reflect and just ask yourself those questions of like, where did my last 5 clients come from? Where are they hanging out, right? Like if they all came from LinkedIn, well then stop putting all of your time and effort into Facebook and Instagram and double down on LinkedIn. You've now just freed up 20 minutes or 30 or 40 minutes of your day. Yep. And you can now do that, take that time and have the conversations, because I hear it all the time, and I'm sure you do, is like, it's just so time consuming to have all these conversations, or I don't have all this time to network, or I don't have all the time to do all of these things. You don't have the time because there's so many things that you're doing that are not actually moving the needle. And when you can get really honed in, and that's the wonderful part about data, is that it's simplistic. And every time, if I can get people over that hump of looking at their data, on the other side of that is such a breath of fresh air. It's that weight lifted of like, you mean to tell me I don't have to do all of these things? Yeah. You mean to say I don't have, there's so much freedom that comes with just not doing all of those things that were weighing you down that really aren't helping anyway. Yeah. Yeah. It's so true. It's KISS, right? Keep it simple, stupid. That age-old adage is so true because it really does make a difference. And you're so right. When one of my clients in Enchantria, when she first joined us, we asked her how much time she was spending marketing her business. It was over 25 hours a week. And that included networking. But like she was spending 25 hours a week creating content, going to networking events, having one-on-one chats, blah, blah, blah. There was so little time for her to actually work on her business. Yes. Because she was doing all of these business growth activities that weren't
bringing any conversion. So we honed in, we added some AI tools, we narrowed the focus, and we had her really dive into what are the money making activities in your business.
Exactly.
What is the fastest way to build the relationship so someone says yes? And she's made some significant changes since January in her business and is seeing the results. Her workshops are filling up, the conversion from the workshops is happening, like things are working. But if we're not actually looking at, okay, what is the fastest way to have a conversation with someone that's actually going to make them say yes to working with me? And it's different for everyone. For some people, it's strictly networking. I know someone who doesn't even have social media profiles. All she does is network. She's in the Fempreneur Collective. She comes to the networking events. She's in the Facebook group technically, but she's never on Facebook, right? Yeah. So it's like, what is the fastest path for you? And really exploring what that looks like, and then finding new inroads to making that faster and more efficient.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And that's going to look different for everybody, right? Like that looks different for everybody. And networking, if, small talk's not your thing and networking's not your thing, then that may not be the right fit, but it could be that you're a really phenomenal writer, and blogging or email marketing could be the fastest way because you can really connect with people on a deeper level. And again, it's all about what works for you. And that's the thing about looking at the data and the facts, is that you get information that is customized to you, your business, and your clients. It is not what's working for me. It's not what's working for Jennifer. It's, there's just so much information, and it's all so customized, right? Like it's customized. It's your information and nobody else's. And there's just a lot of power in that. And it really eliminates a lot of confusion.
Yeah, it really does. What a confused mind for you
doesn't buy.
It's not going to sell, right? If you're confused about what you're selling or what you're doing or where you're spending your time, you're not going to have the opportunity, and a confused mind won't buy. So having that trust, having that base level of knowledge, and like we said earlier, face-to-face is going to be the fastest way to convert that. That's not for everyone though. So you have to play around. You have to explore opportunities. If you've been doing this for more than 5 minutes, you probably have a pretty good read on what your intuition is telling you is the right avenue for you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. And it's funny. I was in a Facebook group and somebody was asking the other day, she was like, I just don't understand. I have really hard time building relationships. Like the conversation in the DMs falls flat for me after a couple sentences. And I just don't understand, like, how do you guys build relationships? And I commented and said the same thing to your point, is like, I'm only going to have a conversation with you for so long in the DMs. And then I'm going to expect that we get on a face-to-face conversation, right? Yeah. Like, because the DMs are small talk to me, or the DMs are there to amplify conversations once we've met each other and we know each other or whatever. But I don't have time to sit there and spend all this time playing around, getting all these little questions answered. And so I just think that really plays a role. I mean, I think for a lot of time again, during COVID, it was like, oh, sell in the DMs. And I think that works for some people. But again, like if it's not working for you, like take the conversation offline, get the conversation offline, have a 10-minute conversation on Zoom can save you hours in the DMs.
Yeah. So true. And if you're saving yourself hours doing something that doesn't feel good, guess what? Exactly. You got all the time in the world to go do the work that actually feels good in your business. Imagine that. Yeah. So one of the things you talk about is how the focused, the boring, the consistent actions beat all of the sexy marketing tactics available to us, which is kind of what we've been talking about. But like on a practical level, let's bring it back to like showing up on a daily basis, being the everyday boss. What are the focused, boring, and consistent actions that you see reaping? Well, I guess it's different for everyone, but what do you see working the best for people right now?
I think, well, like you said, starting conversations, right? Like starting conversations, continuing conversations, AKA follow up, which I think is one that so many people skip or get intimidated by, but following up and I always reframe it. So if follow up scares you, like go and continue the conversation. At some point you started the conversation with somebody. Yeah. And now it's your job to continue the conversation. And then I call it amplifying the conversation. And I look at that as some form of visibility, right? Like whatever that form of visibility is for you, whether that's social media, whether that's email, blogging, podcasting, I don't care what it is, but those three things, right? Like how are you meeting new people to continually bring them into your business? How are you following up with them and having those conversations so that you can close the sale and move them to that next step? And then what are you doing to stay top of mind? And those three things to me are those consistent, like every day you've got to be doing those things if you want to move the needle in your business. I mean, like I said, there's all kinds of all these other sexy things and creating all this content and making all these reels and doing all of those things. And that works. But if there's nobody seeing them and there's no conversations being started, then all of that is not going to lead to anything else. Right. So like to me, the very basics are, meeting new people, following up, and then staying top of mind. And if you do those three things, at the end of you're going to see the results. It's impossible not to see the results.
Yeah. Sometimes we have to remind people we've had a conversation, we followed up with them. We have to continue to remind them that we're the expert they need in safe, chill, conversational sorts of way. But like, just because they say no now doesn't mean that in 6 months things aren't going to change and they're not going to be ready. But if you've stopped having conversations with them, they're not going to think of you first when they're like, okay, I'm ready for a business coach, or I'm ready for a social media manager, or whatever your title is. They're not going to think of you if you haven't continued to build the relationship. Some of my clients have been in my world for 4 or 5 years before they actually purchased from me. Would I like that to be shorter? Sure.
Of course. But some people aren't ready. But if they're not ready, they're not ready.
Right. And people come into my business ecosystem with the various tentacles of things that I do at very different stages of business. And it takes them a little bit to be prepared to invest $500 or $600 a month. They have to be making at least that before they're ready to like spend it somewhere else. Understanding, kind of the journey they have to go on. And are you meeting the need? Can you meet their needs sooner? But you're not going to discover that if you're not having conversations.
Exactly. I actually just had a client sign up last week that I had maybe two conversations with her in 2023. And out of nowhere, she booked a discovery call. And I went back and looked through my email, and she has read every single email aside from 19 of them.
Wow.
Which in 2 years, that's a lot of emails.
That's a lot of
send
emails.
At least weekly, if not more. Out of that, and I just think to myself, like, that's such a testament to that continuing to show up, right? And that she was continuing to follow me, continuing to read. She listens to my podcast. And so you're staying top of mind. And when she got to a point where she was like, I can't get any further, I'm the one she reached out to. And I think that yes, again, would we like to shorten that? But I actually had somebody ask me that question a couple of years ago. She said, well, how can you accelerate your conversion rate? And my answer to that is, I don't really feel like you can accelerate it. My biggest thing is get more people in your pipeline, right? Like, you can't accelerate somebody's decision-making process. You can by putting some crappy tactics in place of limited time but like, for the most part, ethically, that's not what most of us stand for. So for me, it's all about making sure there's enough people in my pipeline so that at any given point, somebody is converting and I don't have to accelerate it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's so true. If your pipeline is piping, the stress of, oh my gosh, right? Like, starts to disappear. If it takes people a little longer to jump into your world and ready to be like, sell to me. Yeah, I think that's so true. And all of that starts with conversations, which seems to be the topic of our conversation today, is really like taking it to the next level. So for yourself, let's get really practical and tangible. What are the boring, consistent things that you're doing on a daily basis for yourself, for your own business?
Follow-up is probably the biggest and most boring thing. Not boring, because I actually really love it, but following up is really looking at and understanding, okay, who's in my pipeline? Where are they at? What do they need from me right now? Do they need me to just nurture them? Are they ready to move to the next step, right? Like, understanding and really looking at and knowing where people are at in their pipeline. So if you've got somebody that maybe you just met, then it's about a nurture. Maybe it's sending them a quick podcast episode. Maybe it's letting them, sending out another email. But again, I come back to those three things. It's like, who am I starting new conversations with? Who am I continuing those conversations? And how am I showing up so that they make sure I'm staying top of mind, right? That's what is really most important to me. But honestly, the most boring is really just understanding and looking at knowing who's in my pipeline and following up and having those conversations. That's the one thing that I do every single day, just to make sure that I'm moving the needle. To me, that is the biggest driver for me. I know this. Again, from my facts and the data, I know that if I continue these conversations and nurture people, that eventually the conversions come, or referrals come, or something, a collaboration, something comes from it. And that's what's most important to me.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. Yes. There's so much gold in just building relationships, and follow-up is so key to that. As someone who is a neurodivergent manifesting generator, I've had to learn to just be present for my own friends and like maintain relationships. I've had to learn some tricks and tips and tricks. I can say that. And one of the things I do is I set an alert in my Google Calendar, like on Sundays, to be like, you need to check in with this friend. And I kind of cycle through, because if it's not in front of me, I forget it exists, right?
Exactly.
Like it just leaves my brain.
We're all busy. We're all busy. Everybody is busy. Life moves fast. And so we have to do those things to like remind ourselves to do them.
Yeah. Bonnie, on one of the earlier episodes of our podcast, mentioned that she uses a notebook, and every week she writes the list and takes whoever she didn't get to the week before, and they move to the top of the list. And then she just tracks her conversations in that notebook. For me, I use kind of like a recipe box Rolodex kind of thing that I've built out that seems to work. So there's systems for everyone. Doesn't require, super fancy pipeline CRM. It can be done with pen and paper, as long as you actually use it and use it to follow through. I think you can figure out a system that actually works for your brain however you want to.
Yeah, I think too, coming back to your question, I think what's also really important for everybody is to be selling every day. And selling doesn't have to be like, are you ready to buy my thing? Are you ready to buy my thing? Right? Like, it's not about being like an annoying car salesman, but making sure that you are mentioning your offer, right? I went to a conference a couple months ago, and when he said something that really hit me, he said, there's a difference in, know, like, trust. Everybody wants to build know, like, trust, but there's a big difference in becoming the trusted expert versus the trusted friend, right? Like, you do not necessarily want, yes, if you want to be the friend, right? Like there's value in that. But from a sales and growth and money, like if you are trying to bring revenue, like you need to be the expert, right? You need people to recognize you as the expert. And if you're never talking about your offers, if you're never sharing clients, results or case studies or anything like that, like you may end up falling into that trusted friend, and people don't necessarily understand and see you as the expert. And so sharing or selling every single day, some type of soft sales, some type of like letting people know, like, yes, this is who I am. Yes, this is my business. And yes, I do get paid for this, right? Really is very beneficial. So even if it's just a small mention of your offer every single day in those conversations or in your content or something, like selling and making sure that people know that, yes, they can hire you. Make it easy for people to understand that you and how to work with you.
Yeah. Yeah. Don't friend zone yourself with your content.
Yeah. Yep.
I've seen it done so many times. Don't do it. Don't do it. You are the expert. Be the expert, even in your content. Such good advice. Michelle, what are you working on? How can our listeners connect with you? And where can they find you online?
Yeah, you can find me online on LinkedIn or Facebook. Those are the two I hang out on the most. And also on my podcast. I hang out there on my podcast. And one of the things I'm working on is I just actually launched a little private podcast off the back of that, which I'm super excited about. I've been having so much freaking fun with it. I'm calling it Back Pocket Insights, just like having a strategist in your back pocket. I love it. It's super fun. But yeah, my podcast, The Real Truth About Business, is where I hang out the most. And then probably LinkedIn. But really, honestly, where I'm loving hanging out right now is in my email. I love it. I never would have expected to love email marketing the way I do, but I really love it.
That's awesome. Yay. It's so much fun when you figure out a love, right? Like you're like, ooh, I thought it was going to be Instagram, but apparently I really love insert whatever. Yeah.
Yes.
So fun.
Yeah.
So fun. Amazing. Thank you so much for being here, Michelle. I so appreciate your time and your wisdom. Super excited to share this conversation with the listeners. And yeah, we'll definitely have you back. Maybe we can get even more tactical and strategic in a future episode. That'd be awesome.
Yeah,
all right.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for the conversation. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. All right, friends, you know what to do. Like, go share, go follow, go subscribe, go check out Michelle, and then go build your empire.